Okay, you're welcome once again to Farmerline's webinar, Unlocking Opportunities and Understanding the European Union Deforestation Regulation and its policy impact on farmers and the traceability solutions. My name is Princess Anita. I head the Commercial and Partnership Unit of Farmerline. We focus on Anglophone Africa. We are happy to have you on board. We have some key aspects among us that will be taking us through amazing topics. I will be moderating 3 different sessions here. We have Jack Steijn. Jack is an expert in sustainable cocoa, chocolate supply chain, and also a co-founder of Equipoise and a business consultant. Jack is also an advisor, speaker, moderator, and chairs the ISO and CEN Committee on Sustainable and Traceable Cocoa in Amsterdam. He's renowned for his ability for effective communication and complex ideas around traceability solutions. Today, Jack will be leading the session of focusing on the topic, shaping a sustainable cocoa supply chain around cocoa in Amsterdam with a focus on promoting sustainability and traceability. We are happy to have you on board, Jack. We have a second speaker as Kay.
Yeah.
Right. I prefer to start from the bottom. We have Agyarko Kwarteng Tawiah. Ms. Tawiah is a technical manager for Côte d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative. Ms. Tawiah is a seasoned development professional, possesses over 2 decades of diverse experience in African development across private, public, and non-profit sector. Specializing in sustainable agriculture, rural development, women empowerment, and education, she currently serves as the technical manager of Côte d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative that is supporting the executive secretary. She significantly expanded cocoa sustainability with the Hershey Company, one of the key cocoa processing companies, and contributed to the education and rural development initiatives with Women Change Makers for Education and World Education. She has an amazing profile. Tawiah also serves on the board of directors for Ampio and Mentors of Women Changemakers for Education. She holds a master's from Harvard University and a BSc from Kwame Nkrumah University, whilst pursuing a PhD at the University of Ghana. We're happy to have you on board, Ms. Tawiah. Thank you for honoring our invitation. Lastly is Marvin Ni Adomama. Marvin is a senior account manager at Farmerline who leads the agriculture traceability and compliance solution. He has been very pivotal in Farmerline by driving sustainable innovation. As a senior account manager, he leverages on his engineering background and data expertise to spearhead groundbreaking innovations, marrying technology, research, and social impact. Under Marvin's direction, Farmerline has implemented transformative traceability systems for major players, including Tulip Cocoa Processing Nigeria, ETG Beyond Beans, and Ecom Trading in Peru and Ecuador. Marvin's solutions and designs has tracked and traced over 160 million worth of commodities worldwide, as well as digitizing over 2.2 million farmers in meeting the EUDR Compliance standards. We are happy to have you on board today, Marvin, and thank you for also honoring our invitation. So as I mentioned, we have 3 different sessions. Our first session is going to be led by Jack. So Jack, I'll hand over to you. Happy to have you run us through your topic on, I'll repeat that again, shaping a sustainable cocoa supply chain with a focus of the cocoa and chocolate industry in Amsterdam.
Sorry about that. I had to mute. I had to unmute myself before I was able to share the screen. And thank you for your introduction. Actually, I'm actually chairing an ISO committee on the value chain at this moment, instead of the cocoa committee that doesn't exist anymore. So now it's the chain of custody committee. My presentation is about the new and upcoming regulations in the European Union. This is shortly about what we do as Equipoise, mostly involved in sustainable supply chains throughout the world in the cocoa sector, mostly from Latin America and from West Africa. So I'm going to tell you about 4 pieces of legislation that are already existing, the first 2, and that are upcoming, the second 2. So most of my presentation will be about the EUDR, the European Deforestation Regulation. And most of you will already know the regulation has been enforced since June of last year. It will be applicable from the end of this year, and only applicable in the sectors that are in scope, including cocoa. What is very important is that people have to prove that the cocoa comes from plots that have not been deforested since December 31 of 2020. And most people talk about this as the deforestation regulation, but it actually also comprises compliance with national legislation, which includes, in the case of Ghana, also child labor and other major issues in cocoa sustainability. I will come back to that later on. In the meanwhile, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive has been decided as well on March 13 of this year, and this will also be of importance to the cocoa sector. I will give more details later on. What is the big difference with the deforestation regulation is, first of all, that there's a threshold for company size, so only the very large companies will have to deal with this legislation. But don't make a mistake here. Virtually all big processing companies in the cocoa sector are part of that, let's say, small group of companies. And all those who supply those companies will have to be meet also some of those requirements, because otherwise the big companies cannot do this. So there is a threshold, but also companies that supply the big ones will have to meet requirements. And this is cross-sectoral, another big difference, meaning that it's not only the cocoa sector, but also other sectors that are involved. And it's a very wide definition of human rights infringements and environmental issues. The third one is actually a directive regulation that is still in discussion about forced labor. So we don't know yet what the progress will be. It will be applicable to all sectors, not only to the cocoa sector, just like the directive I was mentioning before. And there will probably also be a threshold there. But as there's still discussion going on, not much is known there. And at the same time, there's a discussion going on that not many people are following, and that is the new regulation on mineral oil hydrocarbons, and in general, on all kinds of residues that are to be found in goods that are imported into Europe. And those contaminations, they are already part of European regulation. Only the thresholds will be reduced, and we don't know yet to what extent. But I do think that policymakers in Ghana should pay a lot of attention to this, because this could be harmful for Ghanaian exports. MOSH and MOA, I'm an economist, so I have no idea what these are. I should have been a scientist, chemist instead. But I know that you can have those contaminations in your cocoa. If you dry your cocoa, for instance, along the roads, it can come from the emissions of cars that pass by. It can come from the packaging. It can come from all kinds of goods or actions that are done with the cocoa during the drying and the transport of the cocoa. Even the wrappings of containers, the inside of containers can have this kind of impact. And if the cocoa exceeds a certain level, then it will be withdrawn from the market. So about the European Deforestation Regulation. It is about that goods shall not be placed or made available on the European market unless they meet the requirements. They should be deforestation free. They have been produced in accordance with the relevant national legislation, and they are covered by a due diligence statement. A due diligence statement is actually something that needs to be produced by the company that puts the cocoa on the market, and it will have to state where the plot is that where the cocoa originates, that this plot has not been deforested since 2021, and that there has been a risk analysis going on. So the companies that are exporting their cocoa into the European market, they need to provide those due diligence statements. And that means that they do have to have all the information available on the geographic coordinates of the plots of land where the cocoa comes from. It has to have the information about the risks that cocoa not coming from those plots of land is in the supply chain, and it has to show that the company has taken adequate measures to avoid these risks. And then those companies that are importing in Europe need to have a public report about this, and they have to make sure that they are able to react to every substantiated concern. And that means that everybody within the supply chain, be it in the origin of the cocoa, be it in the somewhere in between, any stakeholder can actually make a complaint, pose a substantiated concern, and then the company has to react on it, but also the authorities have to react on that. So you have to be very sure of your supply chain, that you have no risks, because otherwise you can go into problems if you have a substantiated concern, or if the authority of the country where your cocoa is first put on the market, for instance, the Netherlands, if those authorities want to have their own research and verify the due diligence statements that you have made. So it actually comes down to that you start collecting the information that I refer to. You make your assessment, making sure that you understand the risks that are associated with the cocoa. You make sure that if you have identified risk, that you have a mitigation policy in place. You monitor, and then the circle starts all over again with every shipment that is sent to the European Union. Now, what is the impact on smallholder farmers? First of all, if you want to sell your products on the European market, you have to meet those requirements. Second, if you are not really sure, you may lose your access into the European markets. But and this is something that is in the title of the demonstration, of the presentation. If you meet those requirements, you have your management for your own management system in your farmer group or your cooperative. You can use it to order the right number, the right volumes of pesticides and other inputs, and you can also build a series of information on your annual production, the cocoa that you sold, the receipts that you've had, the revenues that you had for that cocoa. That can also help you improve bankability. And So if you are working on a no-risk strategy for implementing, actually the steps that I have shown in the diagram are the ones that you can already start taking, because they will be needed anyway. Just very short on the other one. As I said, this is only applicable for the very large companies, and the exporting companies, the smallholder farmers, the cooperatives, will be in a position where they have to provide the information that the larger companies can use to demonstrate that they meet the requirements. So this is much more in an interactive way. And very important, the larger companies in the supply chain are obliged to help the suppliers meet the requirements, which means that the investments that have to be made by smallholder farmers to meet the requirements of this new directive will have to be financed by the bigger companies in the supply chain. Contrary to the EUDR, where the discussion on who is to finance the measures that are needed is still open. I was still over time. I hope I was clear, and if I were not, there is plenty of time for questions and answers, so you can come back to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jack. All right. I think you were very clear. That was a brilliant and excellent presentation. Thank you once again. So just a little housekeeping for the new joinees. You're welcome once again to the webinar organized by Farmerline, with focus on deep diving into the new EUDR regulation. EUDR means European Union Deforestation Regulation policy, and how it affects smallholder farmers in general. You can put all your questions in the chat. If you have any questions for chat, you can put in there. And there will be a Q&A session, a 20-minute Q&A session after all our speakers are done with their presentation, and we'll be happy to take them right after. Our next speaker is Tawiah. Tawiah will be doing a presentation on EUDR compliance in cocoa farming with strategies in Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. Over to you, Tawiah.
Great. Thank you very much, Princess, and good afternoon to everyone. Very happy to be here with you this afternoon. Let me get my slides up. I hope you can all see the screen.
Yes, we're live.
Okay, great. Okay, yes, so it's great to be here with everyone. I see quite a few people online already. I'm going to be talking about navigating the EUDR compliance, particularly looking at Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. I do have to start off with giving a little bit of background about the Côte d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative for those who are not so familiar with the organization. It was set up just a few years ago by the governments of Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana after the two heads of state came together and really reaffirmed their willingness to define a common sustainable cocoa strategy. So really focusing on the two largest producers of cocoa in the world, how we could work together collaborate more together, have a joint effort to really transform the current cocoa sector in our two countries. And a big part of, or the main part of this vision was to place farmers and their income at the center of all our efforts. So the initiative was formed as a collaboration between the two countries, and then the institution was set up as a legal entity. We are headquartered here in Accra in Ghana, and we represent the interests of the two countries, and we also coordinate joint efforts between the two countries, working on a range of issues from production, processing, consumption, research, and interactions and engagements with the international community, amongst other things. So going straight into the topic at hand, thank you, Jack, for really presenting a good outline of the regulations and what they entail and what it's all about. And I will start off by stating that for our two countries, Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, I think this was already a commitment to deliver sustainable and traceable cocoa to the consumer, even before the regulation came out. Both countries really spearheaded efforts to develop a standard, a regional standard for Africa, for all African cocoa producers, and which is called the African Regional Standard for Sustainable and Traceable Cocoa. This was published in 2021 after several years of a lot of engagement amongst various African producers, as well as many actors within the cocoa sector. And the African Organization for Standardization drove this process. And we're very happy that the Africa Regional Standard was finalized. And currently, Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire have been front runners. We have developed national implementation guidelines, which are also guiding the rollout of the standard in both countries. And the standard is about sustainable and traceable cocoa. So all our efforts related to traceability really also come through this standard as well. So a lot of effort has been made already in the two countries. Both governments have pre-invested a lot of resources to establish national traceability systems. I'll talk a little bit more about them shortly. Some of you may know a bit about them already. And ensuring that, for example, when this regulation came up, that the countries can be well positioned to deliver traceable cocoa onto the market. And the EU constitutes a major market for both Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. For both countries, up to 40 to 60% of our cocoa goes into the EU market. So this is very important for both countries. And we see it as an opportunity, really, this regulation, we see it as an opportunity. We have welcomed the regulation also as a means to level the playing field for all the actors in the sector, to ensure that all industry actors also put in efforts to deliver sustainable cocoa. Many of the major companies already have sustainability initiatives on the ground, but most of those initiatives do not cover all of the farmers. We have about 15 to 20% of farmers in both countries covered by company-specific sustainability programs. So seeing the regulation coming to cover or require everybody to comply to it, I think provides a good opportunity to ensure that all farmers are able to work towards delivering sustainable cocoa, and all actors can then support farmers to do so. So it really puts farmers at the center of it all. So we see it as an opportunity. But the truth is that there are still a lot of challenges that exist. Jack mentioned a bit earlier about who finances the measures that are needed. At the end of the day, producing sustainable and traceable cocoa has a cost. And if you look currently now, the cost of compliance for these regulations and who bears them is not really clear. The EUDR in specific doesn't talk about how financing of the various measures could be done. And if you look at the farmers or the smallholders who at the end of the day are really at the pinnacle of all these regulations and everything that needs to happen, it poses a lot of questions. When we look at what the countries are doing now, pre-investing to ensure that there are some systems in place that can support compliance to regulations that do come up from various markets. All of these things come at a cost. And the history of cocoa, as we all know very well, is that cocoa has been a cheap commodity with not much investment, frankly, in the sector. So all these regulations and things that are coming up now are raising a lot of questions. And we really have to think about what it means in terms of the value of cocoa today. A sustainable cocoa comes at a value. And I'm afraid it's not the value that we all think of in terms of cocoa of today. So we have to be readjusting our mindset and thinking how we can bring better value to the cocoa that the consumer demands. If you look at specifically smallholders and what they need to put in to deliver sustainable cocoa, there are a lot of investments at their level. They have to deploy a lot more resources, for example, to ensure that they can have intensification of production on the same plot of land that they have available for farming, and ensuring that they are not expanding their farms and encroaching into forest or other protected areas. We all know the cost of inputs and fertilizer in particular has gone up substantially since COVID. High labor costs is a big problem in Ghana. We all know the challenge with galamsey and youth going into many other sectors beyond cocoa and getting hired or getting labor to hire, getting people to work on your farms costs probably 2-3 times what it used to in the past. So all these things are very critical when you're thinking about compliance to any kind of regulation. And unfortunately, there is the risk of some smallholders being excluded by operators who might deem that their very locations, perhaps on the fringes of protected areas or close to national parks, etc., might be too risky for the operator to take into consideration. I wanted to also highlight very quickly some of the technical solutions and also policy implications for our two countries, Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana. When we look at the two countries in terms of technical solutions, I mentioned the national traceability systems that are being rolled out. Both countries began with farmer census across all farmers. Currently, we have accurate data on farmers in both countries. We know now that we have a bit over 1 million farmers farming cocoa in Côte d'Ivoire, and a little bit over 790,000 in Ghana. Geolocations of all these farms have been captured. The digitalization of the systems for chain of custody traceability is currently ongoing. In Ghana, they had paper systems, digitalizing them now. Côte d'Ivoire has also digitalized the systems. And both countries are testing the systems that they have now with various supply chain actors, cooperatives, and LBCs, to ensure that they can have a national rollout. And it's both for physical and financial traceability. There's also the deforestation risk assessments that need to be done as part of compliance to regulation. Both countries have their ministries and agencies in charge of forestry have worked on national land cover maps, and working with Cocoa Board and the Conseil Café Cacao to develop deforestation alert systems and risk assessment systems also for child labor. So these are some of the things that the countries are doing on the ground. And really, when you think about the implications for the countries and what collaborations are happening at the CIGCI, I mentioned already that we focus on joint efforts. The national traceability systems that have been put in place by both countries and really forming a strong foundation. We have worked in the past year in 2023 with a group of experts that really delved into the systems and the credibility requirements of these systems and trying to identify what needs to be done to help these systems to support market access and to ensure their credibility. And following on from that work that we did last year, recommendations that the countries have taken up this year, we are going to be forming multi-stakeholder groups in both countries that will focus on traceability, bringing the different stakeholders together to ensure that we have engagements and continuous communication and discussion, how to make these systems work for everyone, how to help them to ensure the systems can ensure transparency and support due diligence. It's critical to note that we have put in a lot of effort, and other countries, it's important for other countries to also join these efforts. We can't have these kind of investments here where we are complying with regulation, but people go elsewhere to source for cocoa and end up deforesting elsewhere. So you realize this is a really collaborative effort that has to happen across board. We have to ensure that legislation doesn't just turn into a threat. It is an opportunity now, but it could easily turn into a threat for some of our countries. And just to conclude, because I realize my time is come up very rapidly, we have to keep in mind that traceability is not an end in itself. It is a means to an end. So it's there as a tool to help us to achieve sustainable cocoa. But in achieving sustainable cocoa, this cocoa must have better or bring better outcomes for everyone, not just on the environmental and on the social side of things, but it should also bring economic benefits to the farmers. Smallholders are investing a lot. It's costing them a lot. I've mentioned already, the standard model for cocoa is cheap commodity. We have to shift from that and have a system that offers better remuneration for farmers. Farmers who are investing to bring value onto the market must be rewarded. And so as we think about, or we are looking at how we are navigating compliance for all the regulations that are coming up, it's a collective responsibility, but it is one that must bring reward to the farmer. And if it doesn't do so, then it's failing at its purpose. So I'll end on that note, and I'm sure there might be some questions I'm happy to discuss a lot more later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tawiah. Traceability is a means to an end. This is an insightful presentation. Welcome once again. I see we have some new participants. You're welcome to the webinar. I'll repeat the housewarming rules. If you have any question, please feel free to put it on the Q&A session. We will take that up and the speakers will address them at a 20-minute session after our last speaker. I'll introduce our last speaker, Marvin. Marvin would be doing a presentation on empowering farmers for EUDR compliance, leveraging on digital solutions for traceability.
Right. Thanks, Anita. I think my first comment here is that it's actually intriguing how there's so much to learn every time there's a roundtable or technical discussion regarding EUDR. Really insightful presentation from Jack and Tawiah. To those who just tuned in, we are really grateful for your time. I'm Avinia Adomama, Senior Business Development and Account Manager at Farmerline, and I'll be walking you through the topic, empowering farmers for EUDR compliance. That's leveraging digital solutions for traceability. As a quick overview to what you would be expecting in this session, we would first start by speaking briefly about EUDR, once again, for those who missed it at the beginning. We'll then dive into Farmerline's approach in empowering farmers globally, where we'll understand certain key initiatives. Then we zoom into traceability, being a core component of deforestation regulation, and hone deeper into Farmerline's global traceability system. I will then share insights into agricultural role in climate change and how Farmerline leverages on data collection to make sure farmers become more resilient. And then we top it all off with potential impacts and a call to action. So that is what you should be expecting. Moving on to the next slide. Right, perfect. Yes, so to the topic once again, EUDR. Now, I'm sure there's still maybe some questions about what exactly is this legislation. So it's actually a groundbreaking legislation aimed at tackling deforestation and forest degradation, particularly in the context of agricultural commodities like cocoa, palm oil, and soy. Now, this regulation, which will come into force in 2024, seeks to ensure that products entering into the EU market do not contribute to deforestation or forest degradation in a nutshell. So EUDR requires that companies conduct a due diligence to ensure that their commodities like cocoa, palm oil, and soy actually are sourced and not linked to any form of deforestation. So this is exactly what the legislation stands for, and this is for what reason we are here today talking about solutions and how farmers can be empowered in terms of digital solutions, right? Now to what we actually stand for and how we actually leverage on this. Now, being a global tech giant, which is an agricultural company that is soul's mission is to create lasting profits for farmers everywhere, meaning that our core mandate is to always put farmers at the first front and to ensure that farmers who have about, say, 2 to 3 hectares of land in a remote location isn't left behind. And we do this confidently by always stressing on the fact that technology plays a major role in bridging this information gap. To how we actually approach this. Now, if farmers need to take the lead, then it's important to ensure that an approach is centered around sustainability. Farmerline's overarching objective is to equip farmers with the requisite tools and knowledge to ensure that they adhere to these EUDR compliance. And we do this in what we call a complete loop. And in a short while, I will explain this to you shortly, just so that you understand how this is completely done. We'll start first of all with the digital traceability platform. I'll be diving a bit more into this in this session. I would love to talk about almost all the initiatives that we're doing, but for the sake of time, we'll limit it to traceability and to what exactly we've been able to complete or achieve with that. Now, to traceability platforms, I'll speak to what we currently have at Farmerline and how we've been able to leverage on this. This is a cutting-edge digital traceability platform, which is merge data actually, for those of you who have actually had a bit of interaction with the platform, and it enables end-to-end tracking of commodities. This has been designed as a cloud-based mobile and web application, and it ensures that at every point in time, you know where to track your food and exactly what point a certain value is added or taken away from your food. Now, this is just the first aspect of how we actually are tackling this entire approach to how farmers can be empowered to EUDR. Now, the second part is on farmer education, and this aspect is actually very dear to us here at Farmerline. And I say this because we've been able to leverage on a helpline system, which is more or less like a 911 for farmers, specifically built to train farmers in any local language using a simple feature phone and equipped with AI features such as text-to-speech, large language models, and through it all, the main purpose for which we are doing this is to empower smallholder farmers in becoming climate resilient. As part of our training, there's also that of our Mission 13 campaign, which happens to also be an initiative to ensure that farmers are constantly trained, they have access to quality inputs and understand the need of use such as solar irrigation and other important measures to ensure that they are actually being resilient to climate. Now, the third part, which is on data collection and analytics, this is actually a new aspect which I believe most corporations and companies will be interested in. What we do here is that we seek to process real-time data from farms, which is on deforestation analysis. In a short while, you also get to see a screen print of exactly how this has been built and how we've been able to leverage on certain analytics to improve on how farmers are actually able to complete the activities on the farm. Finally, for that on farmer engagement and support, what we do here is that we offer a direct communication channel to farmers and enabling timely advisory services and content. Now, I say this all the time, that we understand traceability is a very data-intensive module, meaning that at every point in time, information is always being captured, but does the information have to remain just in a platform? We believe that it's important to always empower the farmer with this information to allow them to be better at what they're doing in terms of regenerative agriculture, in terms of good and smart agronomic practices. And in a nutshell, what we aim to do is to ensure that farmers always take the lead in this. Right. Now, moving on from here, I'll now begin to hone down into traceability as a core component of EUDR. I'm sure most of you may be wondering, for those who may never have heard of traceability till today, I'll attempt to give you a brief overview of what this stands for, and then we'll then look at what exactly traceability contributes to EUDR. Now, to what traceability is. We've heard a lot about traceability today, but what does it really stand for, and what is the core function of it in terms of EUDR? Now, traceability is basically the ability to track the movement of products or items. Most often it's limited to just the agricultural sector, but when you come to understand traceability, you understand that even companies that are on a larger manufacturing scale, like say a company that is producing cars, need traceability in order to ensure that at every point in time they have visibility of their supply chain, and when there's an issue, so to speak, they can easily recall the product. Now, in the context of cocoa farming and EUDR compliance, traceability involves recording and tracking information such as the location of the farmers, farming practices, inputs applied, fertilizers, pesticides, so to speak, and even harvesting. Now, this information helps ensure that the cocoa beans, or for that matter, any commodity that has been listed under the EUDR compliance, is produced sustainably and ethically, which is the main function. And then finally, you'd also want to be sure that you are not contributing to deforestation in any regard. Now to Farmerline's global traceability solution. I get a bit excited when I have to speak about this part because what we've been able to design over the 11 years of serving smallholder farmers is that we've come to understand that traceability is the core function of every business that actually exists in agricultural space. Now, if you want to just understand this, look at it from this perspective. If you can constantly tell how much you are producing, if you can constantly tell, for instance, information about the yield, information about what kind of fertilizer you're using, how this contributed to an increase in yield in the next year, what this does is that it makes you better at planning. Not just that, but it also increases your scope in terms of having higher negotiation power, because in the end, what we want to achieve is to ensure that farmers actually have been able to take the lead, and finally they are able to sell more as a final reaction. So in terms of what we've been able to design, Farmerline's global traceability platform enables users to track the origin of their commodities from the farm to market. Now, this has been designed to seamlessly merge and aggregate information. This has been equipped with advanced data collection modules, which allows you to, for instance, do polygon mapping, recording of key information translation in terms of practices, including inputs used, cultivation techniques, yields, so to speak. Right. Now, moving on from here, maybe to actually begin to talk about what we mean by not just another traceability tool. This is a very important aspect for us because we believe that if you can constantly, as mentioned, train, say, a model to be able to tell what went wrong within a certain period for a harvesting period, or using the same information to actually know whether a farmer needs to incorporate things such as regenerative agriculture or be able to change a certain fertilizer they're using to increase yields, then the farmers are winning. So the reason why we say it's not just another traceability platform is that what we've been able to design is that moving on from traceability as it speaks, there's a larger conversation which is often taken out of the picture, which is climate change. Now, what we've come to understand is that agriculture is one of the most vulnerable sectors to climate change. And even the EU consumption on cocoa represents about 7.5% of its deforestation footprint. Now, what we are doing here is that we measure and evaluate the adoption, right, of these practices to ensure that farmers actually are living a climate smart agricultural practices, and we are able to utilize things such as organic fertilizers and introduce things such as integration of agroforestry into their farming practices. Now, this is a very important aspect because if you imagine always having to collect information or data, as mentioned, farmers need to always stay ahead of the conversation, meaning that at some point in time, information can be turned into actionable items where we can advise farmers on, say, how they can include, as mentioned, agroforestry into their farming activities, how they can actually strengthen their entire supply chain. And in so doing, as mentioned, this is how farmers actually take the lead constantly using technologies that actually put information in their hands. And as you can see here, this is actually just a screenshot on what we term analysis all in one place. We track deforestation, tree cover gain, which refers to the increase in tree cover canopy within a specific area, cover loss, specifying the removal of loss or tree canopy within a forested area, and then finally that on carbon stock estimation, which is a vital carbon measurement that we are tracking at the moment. It's a game changer, and we know that this is going to actually move farmers to a different level in terms of actually having the power and having data in their hands. I'd quickly like to touch on some of the key functionalities, cloud-based architecture. One of the major aspects for us is the offline capability. Now, for a number of technical discussions we've been part of, I always say this, there are lots of amazing technologies out there, lots of groundbreaking solutions, but very little impact on the lives of the farmers. And in so doing, when we are designing a solution, what we believe is that it's important to keep in focus how this can be integrated in, for instance, an environment where farmers find themselves in very remote locations where there may be no access to internet. And in so doing, the offline capability which we've been able to design with regards to the mobile application allows clients and our users to be able to pick information all year round. Cloud-based architecture to ensure that there's a speed in terms of server information, mobile application, open APIs to ensure that there's seamless integration, and then finally that for data analytics and then geographic information. Now, finally, to the potential impact and then the role of technology. We need to understand something here. The adoption of digital solutions and innovation would ensure that there's actually an immense impact when it comes to fostering sustainability and sustainable practices. In so doing, for the potential impact of what this stands, especially for smallholder farmers, the first part would be that of EUDR compliance and market access. Now, if farmers are able to adapt these technologies, especially with regards to how they can track and trace aspects of their supply chain, digital traceability will ensure that all parts of their processes are tracked from origin to the consumer level. And this will also enable cocoa farmers to be able to be part of and access European markets and potentially command higher premiums for their products. To that, for improved livelihoods and economic empowerment, when you increase the transparency in traceability and you can lead with better negotiation power, what happens is that there's access to market information, that is in terms of training, in terms of digital finance services, and this can boost the productivity and incomes of these farmers. And I think to top it all off, I would speak briefly on the forest conservation part and that of strengthening livelihood. So that for the conservation, in real-time monitoring, when you're looking at data collected, that enables you to identify and prevent deforestation. You're able to promote sustainable farming practices such as agroforestry and regenerative agriculture. And then finally, to strengthen your supply chain resilience, using a digital tool, what happens here is that you are able to then, stakeholders are able to identify and mitigate risk proactively. And this ensures that they are able to be able to prepare for disruptions in ever-changing markets as we speak. And then finally, there's a little call to action here, which I put here to ensure that what we need to understand is that, just as Tawiah said in the end, together there's a collective effort that we can all put in place to ensure that the transformation of the cocoa industry leads to a sustainable future. And we are doing this, first of all, by highlighting key stakeholders, which is the farmers and the cooperatives, in terms of adoption of digital technology tools and improved farming technologies, developmental organizations in terms of being able to support and also be able to provide resources to farmers in implementing these solutions. And finally, to regulatory bodies that are able to develop policies and regulations that incentivize these adoption. For the final statement, I'll say that we have the power to transform the cocoa industry, ensuring a sustainable future for our planet and that of the well-being of farming communities. Let's embrace the digital innovation and foster collaboration to drive positive change. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Marvin. That was a very insightful presentation. We do have a couple of questions, and they have been pointed out to the three different speakers. So I'll start with Jack. So I have a first question here from you from Solomon Kwarteng. Solomon wants to know, based on your presentation, does it mean that companies will be given the chance to implement mitigation measures when their supply chain shows risk of deforestation without any penalty?
Actually, it is the other way around. Companies will have to make an assessment of the risks occurring in their supply chain and will have to show the policy they have implemented to avoid those risks. So once the cocoa is being placed on the market in the European Union, those risks should already have been tackled. So it is about showing the policy, showing the risks, but if you have problems in any goods that are being placed on the European market, they will not be allowed in. So it's not something, a second chance for companies.
Okay, thank you, Jack. I think I have two more questions for you since you are already speaking. Maybe you might as well take that. So question number 4 says, how do traceability solutions contribute to ensuring compliance with EUDR regulation in the cocoa supply chain?
Well, on the one hand, you have to have full traceability from each lot of cocoa that's being put on the market to each plot where it comes from. And if you have several lots traveling together in one container in bulk, then for each lot in that container, you have to have your traceability available. So if you don't have traceability, you don't have access to the European market. On the other hand, as was pointed out by Martin, if you have full traceability, and if you have historical data on the productivity of your farm, and if you have all the information on the crops and the plants and the trees on your farm, then you can use that information to also meet other objectives that you can have as a farmer.
All right, thank you. I have two more questions each for Marvin and Tawiah. And then if the participants have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. We will unmute your mic and then you can ask that. Thank you. 2 questions to Tawiah. The first question is coming from Joshua. Joshua saying, I understand that Ghana has made significant progress with its national traceability system. What will become of the independent system that companies already have in place?
Okay, yeah, thanks for that question. Good question. So first of all, I think we know in Ghana that Cocoa Board is mandated by law to purchase and sell cocoa. So through CMC, they are actually the exporter of cocoa beans. And so in the case of the regulation, CMC becomes an operator in this sense. And the national traceability system therefore allows the full coverage, as I had mentioned, across board for all cocoa grown in Ghana. And Cocoa Board is also mandated to facilitate and, support and promote cocoa production, marketing, and processing. So they have a huge role to play. What has been key is that all the farmer census has been done. So all that data sits within the national traceability system. And as I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier, but it was on my slides that every farmer has a unique identification number, and that comes from the national traceability system. So in the testing that they are doing right now, they have, in the districts where they are doing the testing, they do have all the actors working together, the LBCs, the purchasing clerks, the farmer groups, the quality control agents, the depot managers, everybody who has a part to play in ensuring that cocoa comes from the farmer, from the plot to the port, are involved in this, with Cocoa Board being the pivot, basically around everything. So the central data will come from the national traceability system. And this is the reason, or this is the need. This is where there is the need for that continuous engagement with all stakeholders. And that's, as I mentioned earlier, also forming up these national multi-stakeholder groups on traceability, because I know there are already a lot of questions and discussions going on in terms of data access, data quality, data control, and all of these issues. So I think there's still a lot that's being discussed. I do not speak for Cocoa Board. Let me just state, sorry, that I work for CIGCI as a different entity. We do support and coordinate the joint efforts of the 2 countries, as I said. And so based on what Cocoa Board has been doing and has shared, this is probably what I can say for now. But as I mean, the fact that we will have multi-stakeholder groups and there are various points of engagement, I think there is room to ensure that all stakeholders can get what they need out of the system. Yeah. And different actors have access to the system, yes, as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Tawiah. A second question, again, from Joshua. In the process of development the national traceability system, have provisions been made for players in the cocoa waste industry, especially in Ghana?
That's very interesting, the cocoa waste industry. So with the traceability system itself, it's really just focusing on the beans and the chain of custody of the beans from the point of production to export. And so I cannot say for sure that I know of currently any specific role or part that the cocoa waste players play in the traceability system, but I think it's an interesting point. I'm sure if Joshua has ideas, we should probably talk a little bit more about what he's thinking.
All right, Joshua, if you can hear us, you can raise your hand and the organizers will unmute for you to ask any further questions. All right, so then I would move to 2 questions from Marvin, and then we'll just dive into the hands that we have raised. Marvin, I have a question here from Joshua again for you. Will Farmerline provide polygons and coordinates of already registered farms to prevent duplication and avoid harassing farms?
Right. Okay, Joshua, thanks for the question. Yeah. So right. Okay, Joshua, thanks a lot for that. All right, so I'll begin from the top. Yes, Farmerline is committed to ensuring that we do partner with government agencies, with private companies. We've been doing this over the past 11 years, and we believe that for companies that have been able to take the lead in certain groundbreaking solutions, we do not have to reinvent the wheel. So in terms of sharing information, for a data company such as Farmerline, and for the fact that we also go through the right and proceed to ensure that we protect the data that has been taken from farmers. I will say that in some instances, yes, we do have what it in terms.
Okay, Marvin, if you're talking, I think we lost you.
Right. Yeah. So I was just concluding in a nutshell by saying that yes, we do partner with government institutions and other bodies to ensure that we have that seamless transfer of information. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Joshua. I hope this provided a bit of clarity. If you need more information, again, you can raise your hand and I'll be happy to unmute for you to speak. And the last question for Marvin is coming from Tifei, and he says, I have a few questions to Marvin from Farmerline. How do you ensure the empowerment of farmers slash cooperatives? There are two questions in one, actually. Are they the owners of the data that is being collected? Globally, do you have some experience, feedback of the implementation and use of these tools?
Right. Okay. So yeah, thanks a lot for that. So in terms of, yeah, I think I'm on mute again. All right. So I'll take it from the top. Right. So in terms of who owns the data, I should say that we actually are a believer of the fact that farmers actually do own their data, and any information collected on the platform actually is a property or has that sort of right relationship for whoever collected that data. Meaning that as a technology company, we do not actually take ownership of information that we actually collect from farmers, and in so doing, with consent, we are able to then share this information as mentioned in order to create a bit more targeted advisory service to improve on their livelihood. Now, in terms of the feedback loop, how are we able to empower these farmers? Now, we do this in a number of ways. As mentioned, the first way is through capacity building, through the helpline service that we've been able to design, which actually trains farmers in local languages. What we've been able to bridge is the information divide. Because the first thing here is that we understand that if you always control how information is disseminated, for instance, if you always have to send out information to, say, a receiver, what happens is that you actually lose the aspect where if they actually are in need of something in a timely fashion, you may not get to know or understand that. So in so doing, the helpline actually forms part of a major tool that seems like a groundbreaking solution to be able to reach farmers. And we do this training farmers in multiple local languages using pre-recorded messages. We also do that in terms of access and information, market access as well, and then finally also to be able to train farmers in terms of very improved agronomic practices and regenerative agriculture. So this is how, in a nutshell, we've been able to bridge that information divide and always ensure that farmers who find themselves in very remote locations are still able to access information that we have. Yeah.
Right, thank you, Marvin. We do have a number of questions in the Q&A, but unfortunately we have run out of time, but all your questions will be answered and sent to you right after the webinar. So apologies for that. And thank you once again. I would like to highlight onto 4 key takeaways from this webinar. So the first one has been comprehensive understanding of EUDR. I'm sure if we all did not know what EUDR was about, it has been very clear to us. And our key speakers have highlighted on its scopes, objectives, and implications for businesses operating within the EU market. Secondly, is a key highlight shared to us regarding the regulatory requirements. I think that stressed a lot on that, and compliance measures and the role that businesses are playing in deforestation and promoting sustainable supply chain. The third one is the impact on businesses, including the need for enhanced diligence, traceability, and transparency in the supply chain. Lastly is the importance of educating farmers on sustainable agricultural practices, which was highlighted by Marvin within the sector, and aligning with the EUDR regulation by providing guidance on sustainable farming methods, promoting environmental stewardship that contributes to long-term sustainable practices. Thank you so much to all our participants, especially to our speakers, for making time with us today. We do hope this webinar has been very insightful and you have learned a lot from us. We would put an email on the chat. Please feel free to send us any other questions that were not put in the Q&A, or reach out to us for a demonstration on our traceability solution. We will be happy to do that. We have an announcement of another upcoming series of podcasts that will be shared to the same network that joined the participant list today. So be on the lookout for us, and any other future webinar information will be shared to you accordingly. Thank you and do have a great day.